Let me start with the history. And really, the legacy of place starts back 2 centuries ago, really. In fact, 2 or 3 centuries ago. And the legacy of place is very much what you see today, is the locations of towns and cities and villages surround them that are locations of resource. In Wakefield's case, it was the river crossing. It could be a coal mine. It could be perhaps a coastal harbour. But over time, that resource has changed. In the case of coal mines, they've disappeared. And the reason that these towns and places exist has changed completely. So we're to the point now where placemaking is reshaping. And I'm basically talking about the industrialisation of Britain. The building of these great Victorian empires around tremendous inventions that colonised and populated our towns and cities as we know existed probably a century ago. But many of these inventions are no longer, consigned really to our history. And the places that houses them, if they've survived at all, serve as a reminder of the magnificence. A revolution that changed the face of our country and how and where our forebears lived and worked. We have in the latter part of the last century experienced another revolution. In fact, 2 or 3 revolutions. The revolution of technology and the advances in science and medicine. And they have transformed how we live and how our siblings will live in the future. Let me just give you one example, the implications of which are absolutely phenomenal. Think of a child born today is very likely to live to 100 years old. The life expectancy of a child born in 1900 was 48. That's double the life expectancy in 1 century. And it's not just down to science and medicine. For example, I come from, and you can guess my age, 35, from probably the first generation in our history that's not experienced a significant population loss through war. Only a century ago, children were bred as breadwinners, with family sizes over half a dozen or more. Now we're down to 1.8 children per couple. It's a bit of a funny one, what's 0.8 of a child, but you get the message. But also with increasing nuclear families and different attitudes to life and living. And these follow more a sort of unconventional route. So, then there's the sort of increasing multiculturalism and diversity factors. We are a country or an island that's populated by people from foreign shores. We are not a pure nation. And if we ignore this, it'd be at our peril. So, what does all this mean in the placemaking game? Well, let's go back a decade ago. Robert talked about the groundbreaking Renaissance programme that was launched by the then new development agency, Yorkshire Forward, to really try to get to grips with the shaping of the future of our regions, towns and cities, with grand shared visions for the next 25 years or so. Headline-grabbing titles like the Tuscan hill town called Barnsley, and we're very proud of it as well. The Emerald Ring of Wakefield, kissing the Sleeping Beauty called Scarborough, and she's being kissed if you've been there recently. She feels like she has. She's alive. So 10 years on, are these visions starting to appear? Well, yes, in part. They are. But of course, the views at that time were based on a good economic outlook. And for several years, the economic wind was fair and kind to such ambition. We see examples in this city. We're very proud of them. 3 major schemes completed this year, all been shaped by the Renaissance programme in part. But the outlook now is much bleaker. 2007 and 8 saw our banking crisis spill onto our streets with a wave of austerity measures, some of which we're still yet to feel. Tight credit lines for loans and mortgages, a sharp decline in end-user values, particularly in commercial property outside London. The economy ebbs and flows in 10 to 12-year cycles. We missed the recession in 2000. We have had a 15-year gap. But we'll be off again, I think, down the Renaissance road in a few years' time, perhaps 2013. But is it still the right road? Now, taking all what I've said into account and a lot more, the answer probably is it needs a coat of looking at. We cannot build our way out of recession, but what we really do need to do is to make sure that we take the steps from a sure footing. And when we leap, the leap's based on well thought through principles which will be good for tomorrow's changing world as they will today. Let me share with you a few thoughts. Gone for the time being, completely gone, is the massive public building programmes, like building schools for the future, building colleges for the future, the 11 to 19 academies, and any significant public sector intervention in public realm. Bradford's City Park is probably the last we will see in this round, and what a fantastic place it will be. I promise you, you can walk on water. It's only 2 inches deep. So we're probably more about place shaping rather than place making. Smaller scale interventions in the next few years, but still can have a meaningful contribution to society and place. We come to the question posed in the title of this talk, which is, what are places really for? Well, for much I believe in the past, places have been created around function, whether it's workspace, living, entertaining, dining, and quite rightly so. We create them for our benefit. But how are we going to get more for less? And this is the dilemma for placemakers. And there's no doubt in my mind, in the last 15 years, we've seen the repopulation of our cities throughout the UK. Prime example sits down the road in Leeds. Less than 15 years ago, there was less than 1,000 people lived in the centre of Leeds. You cannot believe it today. The figure combined with the growth of the 2 large universities and City College, city living in Leeds, as many other cities, has become a reality. Many of us worked hard for it and it's actually arrived. But it's around the 3 functionalities that workspace, living and entertainment. And of course there are many other spaces for sport, religion, museums, libraries. What are we going to be doing for the next century? They're not going to change dramatically now. We'll be shaping them. So what's the key watchword for our future placemaking professionals and practitioners here tonight? Well, I believe it's the word experience. I'd have liked to have used experience quotient because it's a number of 1 to 10. Valuing place by criteria of quality of experience rather than functionality. Let me explain a little bit on the quality of experience. And it's a view that everybody can take. The quality of experience, whether you're a visitor, a worker, or an occupier. All aspects of place are created but can be measured by that criteria. For place, be it a city, town or village, urban or rural, the judgment of our experience can factor from poor to great on a scale of 1 to 10. But what are the factors that influence that experience? This is a performance improvement model that's based on an organisation. At the top, that's performance, and at the bottom is experience. And all these factors go to influence, notice the direction of the arrows, the ultimate performance of the organisation. And if you think of the model as a town rather than a business organisation, we get a slightly different model. So if you change the direction of the arrows on the left-hand side, so for a high-performing place, what's the experience? We get that. And they're the factors that you as a person take into account when you're assessing the performance of place. It's a really interesting model. The sort of experience becomes, or could become, a major health check, rather than talking about functionality, talking about what is the quality of experience that we take away. And it's a very personal experience. If you look at all these, it depends upon our social pressures, our beliefs, our attitudes, our culture, our background, and we all take something away, but we can all give it a score out of 10. And now the next burning issue that will be on your minds is, how the heck do we score a 10? If you're coming from a local authority, how can we get our city to become a 10? Well, this is the scary bit. Because over the next few decades, we'll have to mould, and we've got, with few additions really to physical place, perhaps some beautification. But one of the real wins is how we could creatively manage and maintain and control and create this sort of pride of place that we all really... Now let me start with something very mundane but very important: maintenance. A clean place devoid of graffiti, chewing gum and the likes is a strong reflection of our moral and civic values. But clean cities don't come by chance. They require much responsibility and dedication to maintain. New education programs combined with some new legislation would help. But take Singapore. You don't find chewing gum on the street in Singapore. In fact, you don't find it in your pocket. If you do, you'll be £1,000 worse off, because you get a fine straight away. So if you go on a plane, throw it away. Now, just think what the saving to the local authorities would be if we didn't have chewing gum on the pavement. We could have entertainment galore. Believe me, it costs a fortune. The same could be said for litter, graffiti. Now, please, I'm not suggesting we get into a police state. I don't want it to be mobbed after the talk. But I am suggesting we want to see significant improvements to create that 10 score, so we start to get very serious about place issues. Combination of, as I said, education awareness, raising campaigns, and imposing some really serious measures that would change attitude and practice. Here in Wakefield, like many other towns, in the late 90s, we had a city centre partnership, and it did a lot really to reignite interest and bringing vibrancy back to place, and many of you sat on them. It brought business and local authorities together around a common cause, but it's very difficult to sustain those over a long period. So perhaps the future for enlightened councils, they'll continue to see the merits of cooperative working. A prime example would be the organisation behind the Harry Potter film last week in Trafalgar Square, London. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was absolutely incredible. And this could be a sort of example on collaboration that could be a key to getting a score out of 10. Partly because it's creating income streams and recycling them that give people an experience, and it becomes part of everyday life. And it's about, I think that's how we need to develop our places over the next 10 years. What about development? Well, Local authorities need to be very kind on the obligations with planning agreements, bearing in mind the fragility of markets outside London, if they wish to stimulate new development of any sort in the next 10 years. But that doesn't mean, in my view, a compromise of quality of either design or its build. Development where there's a reliance on public subsidy, again, should be guarded against. We never learn from the past. Handouts are cyclic. They ebb and flow with the political wind for most of it, particularly the arts and the creative and voluntary side. And I have great sympathy currently with them today, because many are fine and worthy causes, now having to look for alternative income streams, not for development, but for survival. And perhaps the government should really get serious and consider tax breaks for business investment and support these kind of activities which are very much part of our deep cultural history. And it makes us who we are, and perhaps more importantly, who we might want to become. Now let me push the experience boundary a little further. To get this number to 10, we need to do something that's completely different. This is the activity between July and September in Trafford Park, Manchester. Now this is beyond shopping, beyond leisure, beyond eating, beyond dining, beyond drinking. This is part of the experience. Have you ever seen anything like it in any town? Open from early morning till 12 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Now, perhaps I'm not saying it should be in every city. Perhaps we don't want it. But we've got to get more creative, not just open up our places. We've got to raise our game, both for the big and small cities. In 2002, the government launched a cross-departmental initiative headed Living Places, Safer, Greener. 9 years on, are we there? Well, probably we have moved quite a way, but there's a lot more to travel. And the point I make is it's no longer enough. We really should be giving that truly great experience about, all aspects of social and economic life. So my conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, is that place is what you make it. You own it along with others. Respect it for what it's worth and the pleasure it brings, and you please play your part in making it, maintaining it, and its development, and most of all, enjoy it. Thank you very much indeed.